Starting. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the episode 8 after show, live show, whatever we're calling this. I'm your wonderful host, Anders. I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was almost 2 hours long, but we will go into it. So, first, I'd like to introduce our guests, starting with Joe. Go ahead, introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your life.
Oh, how much time do we have here? So my name's Joe. I'm originally from Philadelphia. I live in Nashville now. Moved here almost 2 years ago. I love College Survivor. I mean, if you know anything about me, that's something that's big in my life now within the last year. But yeah, I'm excited to be here. The season has been great. I'm looking forward to getting in all the nitty gritty of this episode that we
Joe,
waited 2 weeks for.
I have two things. One,
Yes.
Isn't there a special item you have? And two, isn't there a special person you've met?
There is, yes. So I do have a couple things. This is like show and tell right now. So I am the I'm assuming everyone has seen the season already, but I am the owner of Queen Victoria's Partner Immunity Necklace. So wanted to showcase that. That is, it's funny. I've never done eBay bidding before. That was my first time. So I set like a bar for myself of where, as far as I wanted to get, but I'm so competitive that I don't know who the other person was, but I just kept clicking. Like I just blacked out, appropriate for tonight. I just blacked out and just kept clicking until the last second went, and then I got it, and it was crazy. And I was at work too, so people were like, "What are you doing?" So yeah, and then I did meet Ashley Roach, another queen, at Disney World a few weeks ago. That's kind of a funny story too, if I have time.
We can get into that later.
Okay. But yeah, that's me. That's enough about me.
All right, next on my screen, Michael Roeder.
Hey, my name is Michael. I'm a senior at Maryland studying economics, and I may or may not play Survivor Maryland in the future.
And they may or may not be on one of my seasons. They're not. It's on Drew. He's a third generation player. So see him in 2030.
Pretty much.
And then Stephanie, if you would be so kind.
Yeah, my name is Stephanie. I am from Calgary, Alberta, and I love Survivor as well. I don't know what else to say. What do you want from me?
And Stephanie's a super fan, reaching out saying, I want to be on this show. And I said, hell yeah.
Of course.
And then finally, our special guest for tonight needs no introduction, but we're going to let it happen anyways. So take it away.
Hi, I'm Taylor. I'm of Survivor Season 6 pre-merge fame. I'm here and I'm excited to share all the gory details that I know little of.
So yes, Taylor is joining us tonight out of the kindness of her heart to at least give us a perspective about her game and what she thought going into the merge and her perspective on the merge. Not that she knows everything, but just, give us a little deets. Like, let's have a little fun.
This is what I heard through the grapevine.
So I guess my first question is for you, Taylor. Since you're here, how was it to watch the, your demise, the end of it? You knew it was coming, watching it all. How did you feel? What were you thinking?
Yeah, so going into that tribal, I actually thought I had Emily and Faith like really on lock. So definitely the tribal where I got voted out was a big blindside for me. I guess what really surprised me watching back was how quickly everything turned within like the span of one Rails trip, basically. And I guess one thing I really am realizing now as I'm watching this is how much Don has like everyone wrapped around his finger the entire game. And that's something that I didn't really expect because he came off as kind of like more mild to me personality wise while I was playing the game. So yeah, I guess I knew I wasn't talking to people enough in the beginning, and I probably could have like done more to prevent my being voted out. But in the end, I think Faith and Emily like made the best decision that they thought was good for them, and I mean things worked out the way they worked out.
So I think we saw in episode Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Stephanie.
No, I was just going to ask, did you ever feel like voting Faith and Emily was going to be better for your game there, or was it automatic? You felt better with them in your position?
No, absolutely. So I know Don and I going into that tribal were supposed to be a really tight couple. I guess part of my turning on him was my insecurity about our alliance. Oops, sorry. So
Hold on. Why are
so
you?
I mean the fact
Okay,
that
Is Michael a twin?
Go ahead, Taylor.
Sorry. So the fact that Suicide Squad had been broken up basically like 2 tribals before really made me feel kind of like unsure about my footing, since I knew the only person I was close with was Dawn in the entire game. So I mean, what people didn't see was I actually had chem class with Dylan that entire semester, and we hadn't been talking about the game for some reason. But the fact that Daniela like flipped to him, I saw as an opportunity to start building more relationships. And I figured I couldn't do that if Dawn was still with me going into the merge. So to me, it just seemed to make more sense to go with Faith and Emily. But obviously, you saw how Dawn talked with them, and I gave away my plans to him, and it kind of backfired on me a little bit.
That's fair.
Yeah.
So Taylor, something that wasn't really in the season, because it wasn't, I think the most important thing about your game is that you really just started the game off by talking to Dylan initially. Because you had a class with him, you were talking to him a little bit, and then
Right.
Dawn was the one to be like, no, he wants you out. So looking back, do you wish that you had worked more with Dylan and kept that open, or do you think it was smart? Do you think that he really didn't trust you, and it was only when he was at the bottom that he would have?
No, absolutely. I think what you say is really valid, because when I walked into chem lab with him that first day, I said hi to him, and he kind of like brushed me off a little bit. And I think that was at the point they had already decided in the library that they would vote me off if they didn't win immunity the next time. So yeah, I don't think he was looking to work with me at all in the beginning, which was why when someone kind of like reached out to me, I just kind of like jumped on it right away. Another thing about the beginning of the game was I kind of like very quickly I identified either him or Dawn as someone to kind of like ride behind until the merge, because my whole strategy was to kind of like slip through the cracks pre-merge and then do more once I like got to like the individual part of the game. So yeah. And then Dawn telling me that Dylan didn't wanted me out, I just kind of like believed it and went along with it, because that was like the one like relationship I had going for me at that time.
So Taylor, you were out. It was sad. We were all very sad. You were the queen.
I'm very touched.
So I guess when you look at the merge, when you went out, what were your perspectives of the merge? And then watching this, how have your perspectives changed on that matter? You mentioned it a little with Dawn being much more social than you anticipated.
Yeah, so I saw Dylan kind of as also like a power player the entire time. What I didn't realize was how little alliances he had going into the merge. I thought he would be in a better position going in, just from the way people were talking to him. And I knew he was close with Alex and Kevo. I didn't know they had like turned on him at that point. So I don't know. It kind of makes me rethink my game plan about voting out Dawn, because maybe if I had flipped to Dylan at that point, I wouldn't have been in such a great spot in the merge either.
Do you guys have any questions for Queen Taylor?
Who were you rooting for once you were voted out?
Once I was voted out,
If
I
anybody.
don't know. I think I was just happy to not be, trying to manipulate people anymore. I was just like happy to like hang out with everyone as friends afterwards. But I guess Dawn, maybe, as funny as it sounds, just because he was the one I talked to the most the entire time. And I think that we were like pretty good friends. So if he won, I would have been pretty happy about it.
You lasted 40 days or close to that. How do you think that, like, I guess it changed your college experience?
Oh yeah, that was a really stressful semester for me to be playing at the time. So I had my classes, and I I'd started a whole bunch of like extracurriculars, and I was trying to get really good grades that semester because I was planning on applying to medical school after I graduated. I think just having Survivor added on top of that while I was going through a breakup with my boyfriend at the time, it just kind of like heightened everything that happened that semester for me. I really had to kind of, I guess, like learn to regulate my emotions and my time a little bit that semester because I was just like really, really frazzled about everything. But yeah, I mean, coming out from the other side, I made like a really good group of friends through it, and I definitely don't regret doing it at all. I had a really good time, especially after I got voted out for some reason. So it was nice.
The stress
Taylor,
was
if you could go back to the very beginning of the game, day one, how
Mhm.
would you change your game? What would you do different?
I would have been at the library for sure. Because then I would have known what Knock Me was all about. And maybe
You
he
wouldn't
wouldn't
know.
have wanted. Well,
You wouldn't know.
I don't know. I'd like to think that we would have been friends because he actually did seem like a cool person, despite the fact that I like basically like attacked him at the tribal he was voted out in. I guess with me and Dylan talk about ChemLab like all the time that we should have been like working together. So, you know, maybe I shouldn't have given up on talking to him so easily that first day. But other than that, you know, Shayna and Daniela, I'm definitely positive that I would have chosen to work with them again if I played the same game all over again. So, not that many things I would change about the way I played.
Does anyone have any last questions for Queen Taylor? Let me check the chat, see if anyone said anything. Nope, they didn't. All right,
Okay.
perfect.
Cool.
Well, thank you so much for coming, Taylor.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, anytime. I always love seeing you.
Mhm.
You're the queen. And I wish you a great, Monday night.
Oh, thank you. All right.
Bye.
Do I sign off?
Bye, Taylor.
Yep,
Bye.
see ya.
It was nice talking to you
I
guys.
wish you a great. And with that, we have lost our beautiful Queen Taylor. But we will carry on. So let's talk about this beautiful, wonderful episode. So I guess from all of you, what are your initial thoughts? How are you feeling? What's happening?
Oh, this episode was a lot, Anders.
Yeah, it was nearly 2 hours.
Yeah, that was long.
But not
I,
just in time.
I was feeling a little queasy, so I brought a
Oh,
throw up
God.
bucket, but it ended up being a colander, so really wouldn't have helped.
Messy.
I didn't know we'd have Faith on this show.
Surprise! I met her too.
Michael, what was your initial reaction?
This was not my episode. Tony and Swale were my like favorite people in the show still, and I was just depressed after that. Like, I was so hyped about Tony the entire time. Everything was like building up, and then of course he exits after like the most climactic, awesome storyline.
So let's talk a little bit about these two votes. There were 3 tribals, but not all got to votes. Actually, let's start with talking about that first tribal.
You
A
sure?
little bit unprecedented. Now known as Blackout Tribal. When you guys started with that tribal, what were you thinking? Did you think, oh man, we're gonna watch a whole tribal? Like what was going through your head?
Honestly, at first I kind of did. Just because even Tony arriving there being carried by 2 people, having his head held up from Emily, and I was just like, is Anders really going to go through with this? Like, are they going to have to walk Tony to the voting booth? And, is he going to have to, he would probably scream out who he's voting for. I don't know. I mean, I think it would have been an entertaining thing to see. But then when he started spitting up and then puked, fade to black, and I was like, there's no way.
Oh my god.
Crazy.
All right. Can I add to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So my first reaction, like, watching Tony come into tribal like completely inebriated, I was like really worried that he was gonna be like really awkward with Faith. Like my initial worry was for Faith feeling uncomfortable with like Tony being like all over her. And then like I literally blinked and all of a sudden Faith is like rubbing Tony's head. And I'm just like, what is happening right now? Like this doesn't make any sense. And then oh my gosh, the kiss. And I was just like, this is whatever Susan's face was, that was my reaction the entire time.
Yeah, that was good.
I don't know if you could call that a kiss. It was just a lot.
It was a distraction technique.
I think my favorite part about the tribal is right before you have Dylan and Danielle completely sober, like this is the end for us, like we're screwed. Dylan's gonna use his idol and it's the end. And then you have Tony and everyone coming in like
what were they yelling?
Vape Nation. You know, that funny joke from 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Love the timely references.
See, that's the issue with college and a lot of time going by. The jokes are just they're gone. They're not funny anymore.
No.
I like Daniela's mood during that tribal too. She was just in the back with her arms crossed, just like not about it at all.
I mean, like this is her. She thinks the last tribal council she's going to, and they're wasted.
Yeah.
So obviously this tribal starts out with a lot of excitement. You know, everyone's having fun, and then it quickly just, you know, it goes to shit. Pardon my language. You know, how did you guys feel? I know how I felt in that moment, which was nothing but rage. But like watching this moment, like we've seen drunk tribal councils before. I mean, All Stars had a very famous one, but this one had just a beyond drunk tribal council.
Yeah, it was. I had kind of 3 different reactions or emotions. At first, it was like, "Wow, Tony is wasted." Okay, and then I was also kind of half surprised, but then half not that he was like passing out and then puking. And then there was another small part of me that was just kind of like, "This is a little." I don't know if I should use the word like disrespectful, but you know, maybe like disrespectful to the game. You know, like. You know, drinking before challenges and everything, like, okay, but I mean, you know, you couldn't carry on with a normal tribal with people in that state. So it was just a little, it was almost like you were kind of taking the game out of that moment for a little bit. And it was just like people there drunk.
I told you before we came in, the like previous RA in me felt really bad for you. Like trying to negotiate that scenario while putting together a televised show must have been very, very tricky because you're trying to care for both the human aspect, but also trying to think of the game aspect of that. And I definitely think that Tony took it too far there.
Yeah, I would add like my thinking is, okay, right now, Anders and everyone on crew is just heckling Tony to death. Like, what is wrong with you? Because I don't know, like I've been in that situation where I drank too much and people were really mad at me. But to do that, like with an entire crew of people who are like trying to get through this tribal, I can just see, I could tell how angry you were. And then your PSA announcement, like I couldn't, like that felt so sarcastic. Like, don't drink. Like usually you add that with like something else, like do this instead.
You know, I spent the next 4 hours after that tribal just yelling.
At who?
No, Susan, not like at her, but to her, because she was. Here's the thing. So let me clear something out about Susan. So Susan really wasn't there that week. She was doing a big teaching project. So although she was in the majority, she wasn't involved with any of it. So and she was also another RA, and so was I. So we both had a lot of opinions about that moment. Especially because she wasn't involved with any of it. So it's like, wow, isn't this crazy?
So do you mean you were yelling at them, or you were yelling?
No, we were.
Or
like,
she was your sounding board.
It was like everyone was. Once we got everyone gone, we went to my room and we were pissed.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. I was like, yeah.
Also,
I was
to
like, why
clarify,
were you
this
mad
was
at her then? No.
I'm not mad at her. No. I was yelling with her.
Yes.
Also, in case we need to add a little bit more absurdity, this was at 6 p.m. on a Friday. So it was still like mid-afternoon.
It looked
Um,
light out.
Yeah.
It was very light out. So also something to clarify for this. So we had that tribal Friday, and then the next tribal was supposed to be Sunday. So,
You're
you
supposed to have
have
a
time
challenge in
between.
between.
But then, because of this, we had to postpone it. So it was 2 tribals in one day. It went tribal, challenge, tribal,
Oh wow.
which is a big reason why both of these, like all of these tribals happened in one episode. Because normally I would separate. I would say, okay, Swally vote happens later, but it happened in one day. Like, it's happening now. So let's talk a little bit about the Tony vote. It's complex. I mean, you come into this, it's Dylan versus Don, and yet neither of them go home. And there's a lot of sort of how does it become this? When you guys were thinking about this tribe, when you're looking at the vote, when you're thinking about how it came to be, who do you think played the best in this moment? How do you feel about the vote? Was it smart by the overwhelming majority of the Don side?
It takes away the unpredictable nature of Tony. And so if you can read other people better from a majority standpoint, it could be what is best for them.
Yeah, I think they went through all of the scenarios that they could think of. They covered, Dylan having an idol. They covered Dylan and Daniela having an idol. They covered Daniela having an idol only. They covered both of them not having an idol. I liked Alex stepping up here. It was nice to see her go to a tribal because I feel like we haven't really seen. Well, I think this was her first one, right?
Hers, Kevil's, and Michael's.
Yeah, so it was nice to see that, and I think her sort of like sacrificing herself at one point was interesting. Kind of showing trust there, and then she ultimately, I'm pretty sure she told Dylan and Daniela to vote for Tony in the end. I thought that was great. I thought that was like the perfect move for her, to be honest. So I liked it. It was complex. There was a lot going on, but I think she played it the best, probably out of everyone.
Was it not Emily's like master plan? Like I remember her breaking down the votes to like the group she was with. Like these 5 are for Dylan, these 4 are for Danielle, and then like the 2 and 2 fake ones that were for Alex, but were really for Tony.
So here's the thing. So although Emily said it to the group, that's just because Emily and Kevel had talked about this. Alex had told this plan to Kevel. She had said, split the votes, 4 Dylan, 3 Daniela, 2 me. That way we can make sure that Daniela goes home. The idols will have no effect because she knows Dylan has an idol. She doesn't know Don has an idol, but she's trusting enough that Daniela doesn't have an idol and will go home. Kevel switches that plan to say instead of Alex getting to the 2 votes, Tony should because they can't trust him.
Right.
And so they use Alex as a smokescreen for Michael, Susan, Swally, and Tony so that they don't realize that these 2 votes are not going to Alex. That's why Emily and Kevel are the ones to make those votes because they are the ones who know the real plan. And then Alex tells Dylan and Daniela 2 votes are going to Tony.
Oh, okay. Right. Because wasn't Faith confused by that vote? Someone like afterwards was like, I don't really know what happened, but Tony went home.
So they all thought that Dylan and Daniela wouldn't vote for Tony. They all thought it would go for Don. They didn't think there would be someone in this group of 9. In a merge of 11, they didn't think someone in the group of 9 would say anything to Dylan or Daniela.
My thinking
it wasn't the colander that time. So.
My thinking was I thought Faith knew what was happening because when she kissed Tony, I thought it was like Judas at the Last Supper, like after the Last Supper.
Goodbye.
I'm gonna betray you. Like that was my impression. I was like, okay, Faith is betraying Tony right now. That's why she's giving him like all this affection randomly during Blackout Tribal. But no, yeah, I thought it was funny that like when they were in the Last Supper group, like proposing the plan, like Emily
Emily had the worst acting. Like, oh my gosh, Alex, like you're doing this for us. You're a hero. I was like, oh my gosh, that is terrible acting. Like, so it makes a lot more sense that Alex was actually the ringleader behind a lot of this decision.
If you thought Emily had bad acting, Don literally didn't let Alex speak. He's like, Alex, you want to do this, right? This is your plan. You're going home. And I was like, yep.
Yeah, you're right. I was just like, well, whatever. This is my team of idiots right now.
Anders, I agree with Paul in the chat. You're giving all the behind the scenes info. It's great.
It's not. This is what happened in the episode. I've watched this episode so many times.
Who wouldn't?
Okay, so this vote happened. Looking at this vote, who do you think made the best move in this sense? Obviously Don wanted Dylan out, but do you think this was a good move for everyone? Who got the most out of Tony going home?
I mean, definitely Alex, Dylan, and Daniela for sure. They both got saved. They both thought they were leaving. I feel like those three made out the best. Maybe Kevel too in that mix.
I don't think it's terrible for anybody who's in like a semi-powerful position, but it's the people on the outskirts or who don't have a whole lot of experience with the tribal councils yet, like Michael and Swale and stuff, that I don't think it's the greatest for.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would add, I think this episode really favored Dylan. Surprisingly, I think what he did, not only like in the balloon challenge, but then also like after merge, is sort of just took a back seat, and he was like, okay, my name's like the heated topic of everyone's like conversation. So like, I'm just gonna like lay low, try not to get myself into any more trouble. And this whole episode really was just like Dylan, who most likely is a first merge boot, like somehow shifting that target onto these two other like underdogs that people were starting to worry about. Tony being like the perfect underdog on his way to the top at that point.
I was going to say they've seen, but I guess they haven't before they played. I was going to say they've seen the underdog of like Chris T get to the top. So
was Chris T on crew?
No, he was not. Here's a question. When you guys were beginning this episode, when you thought about who's going to merge, were you surprised this is how it shook out? Like who went home, how it all worked out? Who did you think was going to be on top and on bottom? Like what were you thinking about the merge?
It definitely surprised me because I feel like it's people that wouldn't be obvious merge boots in a typical Survivor season, or that wouldn't, like there's a lot of big players still left in this game, and I felt like they would have been more obviously coming after each other. I get that they're scared with idle plays and things like that, but I definitely thought that a Dawn or a Dylan or somebody would be getting a lot more heat here. And sure, their names were mentioned and stuff, but the fact that 2 votes in a row they survived without going home says a lot.
Yeah, I think they're kind of, but the Don and Dylan thing is, I think other people are just using it as a shield right now. Yeah. It's like, okay, these 2 players, everyone, it's been Don versus Dylan since, I don't know, episode 2 or something. So I think a lot of the other players are kind of just taking a back seat to that, letting that be a thing. But then with neither of them going home, they're still in the game now. So these other sort of the bigger players behind them still have 2 good shields to use to get them even further. So,
but even if Dawn and Dylan are being the shields, I still see like Faith and Emily as powerful players. Susan as a very powerful player. Like there's so many options here that even if it wasn't a Dawn or a Dylan going home, that like I can think of like 5 or 6 big names of powerful, strategic, sound-minded decision makers in this game that all of them stayed for 2 votes.
Yeah, I would add to the shield part using like Don and Dylan. Swale was having that conversation with Michael, and he actually he used the term shield. He was like, yeah, having these bigger people still in the game, even having Tony was a shield for Swale. And it really just like blew in his face because Dylan's like, okay, sure, I'm a shield right now, but like, let's worry about these other people who are kind of really flying under the radar. And I think Dylan, again, just really pulled out a big victory in this episode.
And I think we've seen so many Survivor seasons and even like televised Survivor that like game changers. If the big players all go after each other, then that's good for the players and they're still playing their own game here. So no offense to them, but like a Michael who hasn't really made a huge move yet and things like that, where if they were to have gone for each other, I think that he could have benefited from that. But the fact that they're not, I think it's putting him in a position where it's going to be really hard for him to get to the end and make a case for himself to win. Where for the big players or the people who are perceived in that way, at the very least, it benefits them in some way to also have those other targets in the game because they can survive longer. And as long as they, I don't know, build a resume or can validate their position at the end, then they could still beat them.
So I think Swally was a big player. I think we've seen through the season he has survived many votes. Many votes he shouldn't have survived. Starting from the very beginning. I mean, Queen Meredith wanted him gone. So
Meredith.
so with Swally gone, how does this sort of shift the game? Who are the big players? Who are still left? Where are we feeling about them? Where do we feel about their positions? I want some opinions here. Give me some hot takes.
So I was saying like Don and Dylan are shields, but I wasn't necessarily saying that they're not like the top two, at least in my book. So they're being shields because they're being talked about, but I feel like there's more going on behind them than maybe some people are seeing. So, I mean, with Swally and Tony going back to back, it'll be interesting to see what Susan does now. I feel like she could either emerge as an even bigger player, or I guess it's really going to we'll have to see like where she kind of goes from this, with them kind of being in her back pocket. I do love Faith and Emily. They're at the top of my list. As my favorites, but I do like Alex as well. And like I said, I'm glad that we got the merge. Really, it's like welcome to the game, Michael. Welcome to the game, Kevin. Welcome to the game, Alex. And I'm glad Alex kind of made that big move in the Tony vote. So yeah, there's a lot of good players out there right now still. So
I feel like this was the first episode that I really got to see Alex play and got to see who she was a bit, and I really liked what I was seeing.
Same.
Yeah, I think this is also the first episode where you really see Kevel do like something for him. It wasn't just Kevel is a periphery of some other players. He is out there. And what did you guys think of now seeing Kevel and Alex play? Michael is still, he's there. No opinions from you, Michael?
Yeah.
Not at the. I mean, Kevel and Alex. I definitely think Alex being associated with Dylan early on in the game didn't help her. So I'm really unsure of where she's gonna go from here. Like, she could just like latch on to some of the like groups of three and try and like get as far as possible. But I don't know. Kevel's interesting. I feel like it's almost like he's not playing, but just like having conversations with people, and like I don't feel like he's affected much of the game. But again, it's like he just came into the game, so I'm really unsure of which direction both of them are going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not really sure where Kev, like, is he closer to Don? Is he closer to Dylan and Alex at this point? I guess it'll be interesting to see where that goes, especially with him saying that he would vote out Don, or that he was the biggest threat. So, is he going to stick with him long term? Is he going to switch to the others? It'll be interesting to see where he goes from there.
Yeah.
So we also see in this episode, because it's the merge, you see people sort of changing their opinions, changing who they want to stay with. I mean, some people because of the challenge, someone pops your balloon, and you go, I don't want to be with you anymore, a la Susan.
That was great.
I gotta love
is that a legitimate thing to be like mad at someone for?
I think so. I mean, I guess for me, I would have tried to talk to my allies before. I don't know if there was a conversation before that challenge started, like, hey, let's try to go after not each other. I mean, I think it's warranted. I mean, if you're supposed to be aligned with someone and they're popping your balloons,
especially if there's other people who you don't think you're aligned with that you could be going after.
Right. I mean, it was pretty early that Michael started going after Susan, so it was
and
just
it
like
diminishes
okay.
trust.
Right.
I think
Go on.
I was gonna say, I think that having the balloon popping challenge right after merge is the perfect challenge to see like where everyone stands in the game, because it's a free for all, and like, yeah, you have these alliances that you had before, but like it really reflects the state of the game, like what you're willing to do to get ahead. And like, I think with Michael popping Susan's balloon, like I understand Susan's response, because like sort of you can read like that game, like who people target, who's like more defensive, who's like going on the attack. It kind of shows like what kind of game that person's going to play post merge. And like, I don't know. I just think like I would read into that as like, okay, he's willing to like get me out or put me down to get himself ahead in the game. And sure, it's one challenge, but like it also does reveal a lot of things about your alliances.
I thought it was also interesting to see who kind of stood there for a while and just watched, and then who actually actively went in and played right away, and whether they went after specific people or everybody.
Sure.
Well, I think we saw, despite them not maybe talking, we did see people standing close to one another or being less aggressive around each other. You saw Daniela and Dylan, when they were next to each other, it was like it was another shield. In the same way that Tony and Swally were like that. I mean, they even shook hands.
Like,
Right.
Yeah.
So funny.
Was that smart? Was that dumb? That
It's
just made it
so
clear?
obvious to them, like, or to everybody seeing
Yeah.
it, what their relationship is. Like, it
Didn't
sure, I
Tony
can
say
see
like,
it.
"Oh, his hand was just there"? So he said something like that.
I can see it if it was just when it was the two of them, like, hey, good game, let's just fight this out. But when there's still other people left, I feel like that's really risky.
Yeah. I like
And then-
Michael hugging Susan too after she got out. It was just a funny moment.
He's a man
It's
of the
like,
people.
why are you hugging me? Like, you just eliminated me.
Another interesting thing is that Dylan and Daniela got to the very end of both the challenges. Are they legitimate threats? Do you feel like in challenges, like where do you see them as threats, Danielle and Dylan? Are they threats just because they're against Dawn, or do they have merits beyond that?
I think that they're strategic players and that they could make something happen. I just think that socially they don't, or not even socially, strategically I don't know. They don't quite have the numbers yet, but I think that they have opportunities and could be seen in a threatening way because they have the capability to do that.
Yeah, I mean, they survived
I
these
really
two.
see Daniela in that way, at very least.
Yeah, I mean, surviving these two tribals at the merge with how much their names were coming up, I think speaks volumes. And I think other people are willing to sort of either go back to them, like an Alex or, but yeah, I think they are threats. I mean, they're definitely challenge threats and strategic threats in their own way. Even though I feel like Danielle at this point just kind of like F everybody, whatever happens, happens. But maybe after these two travels, it'll sort of wake her up again and remind her like, you're still in it. You can still go far. So yeah, I think they're definite threats in their own way.
Who has most positively changed for you through this episode, and who has most negatively changed for you besides Tony and Swally? Because like my negative opinion is that they lost, so they're bad.
And Tony got too drunk. I think that the most positive was Alex, the change that we saw in, whether it's just because she was more prominent in actually going to tribal and everything, that she was able to get more screen time. But I think seeing her ability to form connections and her ability to play after not having been involved in some of the vote or like any of the votes yet was the most positive change for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Alex was definitely the most positive change. And again, I think it's just because this was her first tribal, so we were able to really see, the strategic side of her. Negatively, Daniela, I guess, just because she sort of gave up. and it's just like F this, like I'm going home, like screw everybody. I mean, you're not out, so you're out. So that's why I'm kind of hoping she kind of goes back
Well,
up.
so I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting discussion idea. Like, Danielle and Dylan clearly know they're left out of this big group. Is this sort of desperate, like, I don't know if I really like. Would it matter how they feel? Like, how would you really feel in those scenarios? Would a change of attitude really change things? Are they wrong for feeling sort of like down in the dumps? I'm done.
I think that desperation can sometimes lead to people wanting to align with you. Like if they truly are on the bottom and are making that clear to people, if there's anybody who doesn't feel safe in their position in their larger tribe, they can take full advantage of that. So I don't think that they are down and out completely, and I think they have to be careful, but I do think that, and I don't know who it would be or anything, I haven't got any hints to that, but I do think that if there's anybody feeling like they are not in the top 1, 2, 3 spot of the big alliance, that they are not counting themselves out.
See, Stephanie's doing an interesting thing where she's playing an org right now, so she's saying this. So, hey, if any of you guys on the bottom of my merge tribe need someone, I can see right through it, Stephanie. Vote her out.
Yeah. I'm at final 6. It's not terrible.
I think, I think with their attitude, I mean, they're just kind of like, whatever I can do to move on is what they'll do. And I think Alex recognized that. I think that's why, because I think she was talking about, she said something like, do I stick with Dylan? I think she was talking about him specifically, and keep trying to save him or not. And I think at least for now, she chose to save, both of them. So I feel like because they're desperate and they're just kind of like, whatever I can do to possibly make it to the next round, I feel like Alex at least can definitely capitalize on that and use that moving forward. And then possibly later on, if they make it a little bit further and then they realize, wait, maybe I'm not as, in a desperate situation as I thought, they can kind of kick it up a notch and start making some bigger moves.
Michael?
I think of the two, Daniela and Dylan, I really think if anyone has a chance to go a bit further, it's Daniela, just because Dylan is seen as a challenge threat by a lot of these players, as well as the fact that Don sort of has like this vendetta against him. Like, I got to get rid of Dylan. Like, there can only be 2, like, I forget, kingpins or whatever he called himself. Like, I can see Dylan's name coming up at every tribal until he's gone. Like, I just feel like that's the reality of his game. And that's not a terrible thing. I just think his personality really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Like, it's funny, like Swale and Michael were saying how they actually like Dylan, like on their bunk beds or whatever, like before Swale inevitably goes home. And people are like starting to kind of like Dylan, but then at the same time, like he's just like a perfect person to target after merge, and I feel like his personality pre-merge was like a bit overbearing and a little arrogant. So like everyone was like, okay, I can't have this guy around, even if he is gonna like pretend he's not, trying anymore or like try and lay low. You can sort of see through all of that.
This episode, I really liked him. Like, I kind of was like, oh, he's a typical jock before, like whatever. But like this episode, I was like, oh, I like him. So like I could see where the players in the game are starting to feel that way too, if they are. But I do think that if he were to go before Daniela is freed up more. Whereas if Daniela goes before him, he's still in a hard place.
Mm-hmm.
I think you bring up an interesting like arc for Dylan's character. He starts out in such a powerful position, so cocky. He has the idol, he has an alliance, and now he has nothing.
It's like in Big Brother when like somebody wins the first HOH and they get like a power trip. Yeah. And so like he was in that power position and now he realizes he can't play the next HOH competition and is scrambling.
It's definitely the underdog effect, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So
I think love the underdogs.
So let's talk about these players' changes from pre-merge to merge. Like, let's talk about Swale, because Swally did a lot of things right in this game. He was very good with people. I think he wasn't coming off as a threat, so much so that people wanted him out. And then in the merge, I think it all changed. I think everything flipped. Everything that he was doing right went wrong. How do you guys feel? What's your read on Swally? Where did he go wrong?
Well, I think it was interesting that he said in one of his confessionals, like I'm going to play like I did in the beginning of the game and be low key, but then he's going around talking to everyone, swallaying people.
His name was brought up like every tribal he went to.
Yeah, so like I mean, he did well in the beginning to escape, the tribals. I think he got a vote at least at every tribal that he was at almost. But yeah, I think maybe it was just like the excitement of the merge and everyone coming together that he just I think he just overplayed. As soon as the merge happened, and I think he was the true Colander.
Yeah, I think. Sorry,
Go ahead.
I think
Go ahead, Michael.
Tony, when he shook hands with Tony and like he won that immunity challenge, I think all his power just went right to his head, and he's like, "Okay, I got the immunity idol this week. Like, Tony's working with me," and it was weird because both of their story arcs, like, they both just started getting all this like clout around their name. And like I remember there was like one clip you showed where all the girls are talking and they're all like, "Yeah, I like Tony now." Like all of them are like, "Guys, if Tony goes to the end, we're voting him to win." And I'm watching this and I'm just like, from day one, everything Tony said has made me laugh, and I'm like, what is happening? Like he's becoming a celebrity and like he's becoming his own meme. And
The
and then
Tony effect.
and Swally and his shake hands, and I'm just like, ooh, now they have too much attention. Everyone's watching them, and Dylan was able to scrape out of those votes. So
I think what's important about Faith swallaying is Swally said it like a couple times. If someone says the grass is blue, he's like, "Yeah, it's blue." And if someone says the grass is red, he says, "Yeah, it's red." Swally will not parrot, but he does what people want him to say. And she was talking about, with swallaying is very real. If you ever have an opportunity to talk to Swally, it happens. Where he says a lot, but he doesn't say anything. Regular people do it too, not just stars. But do you think that's something that everyone does and Swally just does too much? Or is this like, what is this a case of? Like, what is swallaying? Do you guys ever feel like you swally, or people who do?
Well, do you?
Oh, all the time.
No. He confused me all the time. I did not understand Swally. Like, I do not speak Swally. Sorry. So no matter what, whenever I watched him right from the start of the game, I was like, huh, who is this person? And I just like never got a good picture. So sorry.
I definitely appreciated his passion for the game. I think, but yeah, once you get to the merge, if you're telling everybody what they want to hear, everyone's not on the same side. So of course they're going to compare notes, and then it's like, well, wait, he told me the sky was purple, but he told me the sky was green. So it's like, I think it was just a little bit too much. I mean, I understand talking to everyone and fostering those relationships, but with people comparing notes, it was just a little bit too much.
I think what Swally does wrong with Survivor, from my season 6 perspective, is he's almost overly strategic, and he lacks emotional connection with other players. Like when you talk to him, he's almost like not a real person. He's just like a player in the game. And almost like what he says in confessionals sounds like very like scripted, like something like someone on CBS Survivor would want you to say. And he's just like following the script, like, and then this is what's happening this week. But like, yes, it's just this emotional disattachment from the game. And people start to notice that and see that like he's just working all the angles, but he's not actually like investing well into one individual, which I think is what you need for building trust in this game. And if people see that like you just think of them as a pawn or like a chess piece, then they're gonna eventually they're gonna figure that out and start to wise up on you.
Let's talk a little bit about Tony.
Are you sure you want to, Anders?
Oh, I would love nothing more than talking about Tony's journey.
Today or for the game? 'Cause,
Oh, well, today he's great. In the game, I mean, you saw.
right from the very first episode.
Yeah, let's not forget that.
From the very first episode, he was drunk, and then he continued that. He just went to an extreme.
Then he got high.
Then he got high. Oh man. Here's a little behind the scenes scoop. After Blackout Tribal, I sent a very strongly worded letter to all my players about don't you ever come to Tribal drunk again. I swear to God. And you know what? He didn't come to Tribal drunk. So
You found another alternative.
I applaud him.
I guess like my question would be like, is that him? Was he playing it up for the cameras, for the game? Like what? Yeah, like that.
What is Tony? It's a
Who
good
is
question.
Tony?
What is Tony? Is it even answerable?
Perfect.
Do we know?
I mean, Tony, the first time he came to a confessional, he was completely sober. You can definitely tell the difference between sober Tony and then buzz Tony. It's like a difference in just like the ability to speak, the ability to convey thought. And he just, he fluctuated. But when he was sober, he was almost a mastermind of this game. And I'm being serious. Like, you can see him having really good reads on people, like a Bell. Really good reads on his relationship with Swale and his place in the game, his relationship with Susan and Michael. But then you also have the moments where Tony goes, yeah, I wanted all the hot people in Wind Tribe. And I was a 6 out of 10 of drinking. So, like, what
So
is
did
Tony,
you
really?
cast drunk Tony or sober Tony?
I preferred sober. I think if Tony was 100% sober the entire game, he would have done better. But no, he would have.
Maybe
What,
less good TV?
He wouldn't have been as funny though, and that's the
Right.
real issue.
What
Thank God.
what year was he when that was filming?
I think he was a senior. No, he was definitely a senior. That's why.
Okay.
Wow.
I mean, he
It's like-
applied, so like he liked Survivor, I'm assuming, and wanted.
Oh,
to
of
play.
course, he wanted to play, but he was also doing a thing where like he wanted to get drunk every day of his last semester. So they happened at the same time.
Yeah. Right. You found that.
But I will
perfect
say this: I just
middle
want to reiterate: if you ever think that drinking at Survivor is a good choice, you're an idiot. Don't do it.
Chris
You're going
won.
to lose.
Chris T won. He won.
He
That's
was
not a
in
good
trouble
example.
more when he was drinking than when he wasn't.
No, but you let them have bad expectations for you at the start, and then when you sober up as the season goes on, you pull out a
Oh.
W.
So only drink pre-merge is what you're saying, Michael.
Remerge.
No, but you see, the difference between All Stars Drunk Tribal and my Drunk Tribal is that one ended with vomit. The other one had vomit, but not during. And the difference is that like everyone in All Stars Tribal was like, fun drunk. This
Yeah.
was like blasted.
This was
Yeah.
past the point of no return.
right.
Like to the point where it's looking at is everybody safe?
Mhm.
This was literally people don't remember this tribal. People that were there don't remember it.
So I guess from your perspective, do you think even if they hadn't all been blackout drunk, do you think that if they would have voted that night, the vote would have been the same as what it was?
That's an interesting question because it's like, Tony really made a bad impression at that.
Yes.
Everyone was annoyed with it, even the
And
people who were
A
saucy.
day and a half later, or whatever it was, how do they
He-
feel about everything?
So, I mean, if we're being completely 100% honest, he would have gone either day. Like, the plan was in place, which is why there was nothing in between these tribals. The plan and everything was still in place. But it's a better story. I mean, he's going to go home, but at least he made a fool out of himself. And it's like, well, now there's this deniability. Like, oh, Dylan and Danielle might have voted Dawn, but Tony was such just a drunk boy that they had to get rid of him. And who's going to blame them? Who's going to say from that moment, like, there's a mole instead of,
You're
here's
right,
someone who
Tony
made
was
a
an
mistake.
idiot. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the players who are still in. Let's talk about Faith. I mean, what a character. She gets her own swallowing term. She gets to be a colander.
Can we talk about the opening part of the episode when Micah
Yes.
has 2 awesome scenes in this episode. But the first one comes in, he's like, I cut my hand on a glass, and she's like, you stopped a robber? And I was losing. I literally
I
had to
was so
pause
confused.
my phone and like go laugh in the corner for like 20 minutes. Like
I
that was
watched-
so funny.
I watched that at like 1 a.m. last night, and I was like, wait, did I just hear that right? Like, I had to rewind, and then I was like, I need to watch the rest of this in the morning. Like,
Yeah, that was a perfect moment. Is there any more backstory to that? Like,
No, Micah came in to get something, and then he had the cast on his finger, and Faith just goes, "What happened?" And he's joking, like in the least convincing way, is like, "I stopped a robber, and my finger broke. No, I cut myself on the glass." And then she goes, "You stopped a robber?" And he was just like, "Faith."
oh.
And we had to be like, "No, Faith, he cut himself on glass." And she's like, "Oh." There was
he
another
could
moment.
stop a robber if he wanted to.
I mean, he could.
Here.
Look,
dear.
Faith is a quote machine.
Her and Tony.
I like-
Her and
I
Tony.
ship them. I ship them.
Oh dear. First you were worrying about him shipping.
When Tony came like really drunk to the blackout tribal and Micah was there and he like jumps on top of Micah and he's like, I love you so much. I love you. Like, I just love that your edit is just like, I'm going to show as much of season 5 as possible. Like, I enjoy
Well,
it.
that was my
I
entire
love
crew.
seeing
My
all the
entire
players.
crew was all stars and me. And Micah was my vice president, so he's there.
Oh,
Your errand boy.
I like how Faith kind of takes control of some of the tribals. Well, not takes control, but like she'll just flat out just turn around and just start asking questions. I love that.
Yes.
She's like a little co-host, which is great. I feel like you need to put that under her name in the opening credits. But I think it's kind of funny because it's kind of interesting. Like tribal, it's like you don't have to say anything. Like, or you don't have to tell the truth. So it's kind of funny how some of these questions come up and people are just like, yeah, like, this is what I did. Like, this is why I don't like Dylan. This is why I don't like Don. Like, it's kind of interesting how honest people get. So I don't know if she's doing that knowing that people do that or just she wants answers. And, I think she's done it at a couple tribals. And I feel like she's gotten like pretty true answers out of people. So if it's like a strategy of hers, I think that's awesome because she's getting a lot of good information.
I think she mentions in this episode her reasoning behind doing this is that she's not lying. She's putting all the information out there. And it is interesting. She really focuses on Dylan and Don. Why do you hate each other? What's going on? When she could just as well leave it alone. Why? How do you guys feel about that? Is she being smart by being so loud, so upfront, so like, I think everyone's lying.
I agree. Like, I think it's a real power play. Like, it's only beneficial to be able to start a dialogue like that during tribal, and she does it in a very subtle way. I think at least from my perspective, she's not like putting a target on her back. It's kind of just like her personality coming out at tribal. And like, I remember like in one of the clips, she was like, yeah, I'm going to call out Swale on this at tribal. Like, I'm going to bring this up. And it's like, for me, like having played and then also just like enjoying a solid tribal council, like those are the kind of people you want in the game. And like, I think she's doing it well. I don't think it's like to discredit her in any way.
Yeah, because no one reacts negatively to it, I don't think. It's just like, oh, Faith is asking another question. Like, let me spill everything that I have. So yeah, I don't think it's hurting her at all. I think it's a good move.
Yeah. Like we're what, 50 days in now. They know who she is. They know how to read her. If she had done it to the extent she's doing it now on day 1 or at day 3, whenever the first tribal was, then it may have come off differently. But I think that if people have a sense of who you are as a person and a sense of the way that you conduct yourself in conversations outside of tribal council, that it wouldn't alarm them as to what she's doing.
I think my
I'm
favorite
guessing she does that all the time, not just at tribal, is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, it's this is an authentic Faith moment. Is when
Yes.
she's just at tribal saying, "Swally, did you put that fake idol there?" Let's talk about that fake idol. Hold on, we didn't even cover
We didn't
the
even
idol.
talk
Yeah.
idols
Let's
at
talk about that
all.
fake idol. In the first like 10 minutes of this episode, there are there's like a billion idols just everywhere. Swally puts a fake one. Don finds a real one.
I know. I was like, wait, who gave who a clue? Who has the real one? Who has the fake one? What did they happen before? I was very confused.
Yeah, I think because Kevel got a fake clue from Dylan, but then didn't Kevel give Don the real clue so that Don found the real idol?
So each tribe had its own idol. And when they win challenges, they get the clues. So Ferocity had an idol, and that's the clue he gave to Don. And the clue Dylan was giving out was a fake Mankato clue.
Mm.
Meanwhile, the real Mankato idol was at the chapel, theoretically. So Swale, Danielle, and Dylan are the only 3 who have this clue. Swale gives that clue to Emily and Dawn and Faith, and they go find his fake idol that he planted there. Was that a smart move by Swale to make this fake idol? Like, is this a good move on his part?
I'm not a huge fan of fake idols in real Survivor. I feel like they put their game at jeopardy, and that especially this early in the game, that it's very risky because it plays to the intentions that he has and the type of player that he is, where I think the only time where it can be really beneficial if it's, say, final 5, final 6, or I guess final 5 it wouldn't because you can't play idols, but like final 6, final 7, and somebody is a huge threat that you want to maybe have a chance to find the real idol, or you want to make them feel comfortable or something like that, where I feel like at this point of the game, it's way too risky.
Yeah, I agree. I think I understand what he was doing, where it's like, okay, if they find this, then they'll leave. But yeah, again, too early. And I know he's a big fan of the show, so maybe he was just trying to do things that he's seen on the show too, just to get a even greater Survivor experience. So maybe that kind of factored into it. But yeah, I don't think it was the right move for him to do that.
Yeah.
My question is, how did they confirm that it was a fake idol? Like,
Oh yeah.
it was said like, oh yeah, we were able to confirm that was a fake idol. Like, did crew confirm that? I'm confused by that.
So I
Or
mean,
did they,
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, or did they compare it to a real idol, the scripture and everything?
Yeah, that's 100% what it was. Dawn found a real idol with a real note, and the real note is much more complex than "Congrats, you found an idol." It's a different paper. It has different things on it. So without knowing anything, they find this fucking thing with "It's an idol," and they go, "It's an idol," and then
Yeah.
they find a real one. Obviously, they all look different because I'm cheap and I don't have the same ones. Okay.
That's a
I
good
just
thing.
find some beads and go, "It's an idol now."
That's what
um,
CBS Survivor seems to do too.
Yeah, well, I think that's smarter than like making it a grand thing. But Don has a real one. He shows it to them. He shows the note, and they go, "Why is this note so much better?" And it's just a realization that this idol was super easy to find. The note is different. Like there's just enough evidence for them that you look at the two and you say, "This one's probably fake."
Yeah.
And this happened all within about like a day or two, which, because they came in, they were like hot. They were like, "We found an idol," and then the day after, they're like, "It was fake."
The feds were formed.
The feds, they sniffed out the fake.
Were you filming them during that confessional? Were you?
Yeah.
You obviously knew it was fake, so did you have to like How do you keep a straight face during that type of moment?
I usually don't react anyway when people show me idols, but they were like, "We found an idol." I was like, "Cool," and I looked at it and went, "I didn't hide this. I don't know what this is." And later I found out this is Swale's. Like when he mentioned later he hit a fake idol, I was like, "Interesting. Where did you hide this?" And then I put two and two together. But until like when players don't tell me they put out fake idols, I usually want them to, but if they don't, I'm just like, "Yep, cool." That's an idol. And then I go, "What are you gonna do with this idol, huh?" What am I gonna be like? Do you think it's real? Although sometimes if I'm like, I don't like this player, do you think this is a real idol?
Real idol.
Wow. Andrew's bias coming in here.
No, I never show my real bias, but I have a lot.
Just to us.
My players know I have strong bias. Just I usually wait till they're gone to tell them how much I hate it.
Wow.
It's a joke. Okay.
Tell
So
us when we're off live.
we've talked about Faith. How, as a game player, do we see her as a strong contender for the win?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's at the top of my list. Well, number 1 or number 2 for sure.
Wow.
I'm all about the bread.
I definitely think Merge was like a growing phase for her game. Like, while she has had her like kind of ditzy moments on screen that like don't really paint her as much of a thinker, I have noticed like in a lot of her conversations and even with like the tribal questions that she like threw out in the air as her co-host status, like I was just like, okay, I can see she's getting better at the game. And like even with her like not fully trusting Dawn and like some of the things that she's sort of just realizing through like intuition, I think she's growing as a player. I don't know that she gets to the end, but I think she's definitely going to be a threat once like Dylan and Dawn are gone. If they are getting voted out.
If they go. So let's talk about the third we didn't talk about Dawn. Never mind. Let's talk about Emily, the other pair, the other part of her pair. How do we feel about Emily? She talks a lot.
At first I found it really hard to separate the two of them because I didn't know who, like, if everything was mutual decision making or if there was somebody kind of taking the lead in that. And I still, I guess, go back and forth a little bit, but I do think that Faith is starting to take more of that kind of like alpha role in their duo. And whether it's just the fact that she's been the one leading some of the other conversations or with like other players to bring in with them, it seems like she was more influential with Dawn and things like that. So I think that Emily is the power player and that she definitely could win, especially if Faith was not there. But I think if it was the two of them, that Faith would win over Emily.
Yeah, I agree with that and it was funny too because I think at one point Faith was like, "Oh, the two of us are going to get to the end, but you'll win because you're nicer." I don't know if that would actually be the case. A lot of people keep saying Emily's so nice, but if she gets to the end, she's going to have to backstab some people. So it'll be interesting to see if they'll look at that and be like, okay, maybe she wasn't so nice or respect it as a game move. We won't know, until if she gets to the end. So.
And it always hurts more from the people you feel closest with if you're backstabbed. So she very well could take the heat on something more than somebody like Faith, who they're just like, well, she tells it like it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like you guys have said, like within the Fed, Emily is definitely like in the stronger position, having a tight relationship with Dawn as well as Faith, even though Faith and Dawn don't exactly fully trust each other. But I don't know. I think if anything, if Emily were to go anytime soon, it would be like because someone fears Dawn has an idol and they want to like take out this alliance. So they target like the least noticeable of the three. And that's how I could see Emily finding herself in a bad situation. But for the most part, I think she has some pretty good shields on either side of her, like that could get her further in the game. I honestly think like between the girls who are like doing a really good job of like having strong relationships, it'd be like Emily and Susan.
Yeah.
So I think Susan plays a big part in like what happens to Emily down the line. I don't know for sure, but I can see both of them having to like at some point like come head to head.
Yeah, I think because Joe, you mentioned that Faith was at the top of your list. I think Susan would be closer to the top of mine, but that I can see Faith and Emily both really close behind there.
So let's
Yeah.
talk a little bit about Susan. I mean, she was in Ferocity. She was a very or not prominent, but she was there. She was in the majority every single time. She had a very close relationship with Swally and Tony, and they're both gone. So how do we feel about Susan? She wasn't very present in this episode, and she literally wasn't present for most of the beginning of Merge. So how do we feel about her? How has she changed over the course of the game? Where do we think she's going?
Pre-merge, I saw her as a very, very prominent player and a very influential player. I think that losing two people who she's worked with and aligned with previously is a hindrance in the short term to her game. But I also think that because they were both people that were on people's radar, it could free her up to make different moves now. Especially if she has the time to do so, which it sounds like she didn't in that week of the last episode here.
Yeah, I think she played a great game in the beginning and great social player. You know, she had Tony and Swale, like we mentioned. She has Michael-ish now, sort of. So that'll be interesting. I feel like for me,
that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Unless he pops another one of her balloons. I mean,
I know. But she's actually I have the three girls sort of at the top of my list, and you could sort of interchange them. I feel
three
like
girls. There's 5 of them.
The three we just talked about,
Yeah.
Faith,
Oh,
Emily,
gotcha.
and Susan.
It's like,
but,
okay, I guess Daniela and Alex aren't women anymore.
No. But I feel like for me, Susan's sort of at a crossroads. So it's like she lost Tony and Swale. So it's really just going to be interesting to see sort of what path she takes moving along in the merge. So I feel like it'll really define, can she sort of recover from this and fall back on these other relationships that she's had and get her further. I don't feel like her name really has come up much as like a target, at least. So I think she has that going for her as well. So yeah, I think she's, depending on where she goes going into the merge, it'll be interesting to see sort of which path she takes.
Yeah, I think Susan, this episode really wasn't for her either. Like, it was smart of her to align with Tony and Swale. Like, those are really good shields to have in the game. And it just really, again, I've repeated, it's like Dylan really won out in this episode. So like now we have Susan, who is sort of vulnerable. She has Michael and like not too many close relationships, but like she's gonna have to regroup now. And I don't know what side she would try and work with, or if she's just gonna try and lay low. But I do think she's got a rough road ahead of her.
I think she's the type of player, though, that if she's final 6, she can make the moves that she needs to make, no matter who's there. It's just getting to that point, getting herself there, that is going to be hard for her after losing 2 people who she was working or could work with, at least.
Great. Let's talk about, we've already talked about 3 of the girls. Let's talk about the other 2, Daniela and Alex. Let's start with Alex because it's alphabetical. How are we thinking about Alex? I remember in the first live show, everyone's like, Alex is going to win this game. She's the best. I love Alex. We're getting married. How are we feeling now about her?
This episode, I loved Alex, but I still don't know what her path is. It's like I haven't really seen enough yet.
Yeah, I remember that too from the first episode. So it's kind of nice that she's Alex 2.0, or I guess original 1.0 Alex is kind of back. She's risen from the balloon pieces and she's now, playing the game. I think it's just the fact that she never went to tribal. Not that I forgot about her, but it's just like, that's really a huge thing because you really see what the moves that she's gonna make. I mean, you can talk as much strategy as you want, but if you're not going to the tribal, you can't physically do anything. So
You can't prove it.
right. So I think it's like, oh, like she was probably close to the bottom of my list before this episode, but now she's kind of like back in it. She's actually probably number 4. So actually 4 of the girls are at the top of my list. But anyway, so yeah,
the top 4 for you are Emily, Faith, Susan, and Alex.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But so yeah, I'm glad we kind of got to see her play. And again, that the Tony move, given Dylan and Daniela the information to vote out Tony, I think that was huge. And I hope it propels her further in the game.
I mean, we saw before this, it was just Alex and Dylan. That was the alliance you see every single time. And now it's not just Alex and Dylan.
No.
It's Alex and Kevel or whoever else.
And I think too, someone was, I forget who she was talking to, but it was about the Shayna vote. And she was like, oh yeah, I don't know how that happened, but I'm pretty sure
Dawn.
It was Dawn. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was her and Dylan that pulled Daniela aside after Thomas was voted out and was like, no, you have to get Shayna out at this next tribal. So I feel like it was kind of, I feel like Alex, she has a good read on the game. She has this sort of like side alliance with Faith. That'll be interesting to see like when that comes into play more. But yeah, there was a couple confessionals where I was like, she was doing a really good job at just kind of not owning up to things that she may have had more of a hand in than people knew.
Her read on things is interesting to hear because she has a bit more of a full picture than some other players in the game.
Yeah, I think Alex really like showed what she was capable of in this episode. Like, despite having never gone to tribal, she was able to help get rid of Tony, and I think it was a really smart play on her part, and she did do a good job of not like seeming like she was orchestrating everything. But at the same time, I think she's still pretty closely associated with Dylan. So the second like Dylan gets out, I think her name becomes like a topic of discussion. Especially like, I mean, I'd be interested to see Faith and Alex work together, but like I could see them ultimately like having to target Alex just because she's been later added to their alliance, and her post-merge game like came in with like very little numbers.
Awesome. Let's talk about Daniela. Suicide Squad.
She's a very vocal player.
I would agree with that. That's yeah.
Was there footage of her fight with Dawn?
I wish. Oh, if there was footage, I would have. See, that's an issue. I just don't have footage of a lot of things, so it has to be this person talking about it. Okay. I wish I had. They were. Surprise, surprise. They were out drinking when this happened. And I feel like when you're drunk and you're out at a bar and you're being accosted by another player, the last thing you're probably going to do is whip out your phone and be like, hold on, can you say that into the camera?
We need to film this. Anders needs this.
If I had been there, I would have 100% filmed Dawn yelling at Daniela. Didn't happen from film, but like it happened. I 100% believe that Dawn and Daniela fought. That seems like a thing that happens.
And it was over the Shayna vote?
Oh, 100%.
That was the topic.
It's about, they were in an alliance and then she betrayed them. So at this point, looking a little bit retrospectively, do we think that Daniela made the smart move of turning on Suicide Squad?
I think she's in a rough position now. So retrospectively, probably not. Also because I loved Shayna. But it's hard to know. Oh, I'm echoing on myself. Sorry.
You're fine. We can't hear it.
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think we were all kind of like slamming our heads after Daniela missed the opportunity to get Dylan out. It's like, what are you doing? Like, that was, I don't know. From my perspective, that was a really dumb move in the game. It seemed like she kind of was just pressured into working with Alex and Dylan. And I think that's a lot of why people were against Dylan for a solid amount of time. Like people watching at least are like, oh, I don't like this guy. Like he's being mean to Swale. Like he's like forcing people to vote with him. So I don't know. I guess that was a big mistake on her part. And I don't see, I feel like where she's at right now is because of that decision. And she really hasn't gotten much trust from that point forward.
Totally. All right, let's move on to our fellas. The three fellas we haven't talked about. Let's start with the most prominent and most active of the three.
Michael?
Michael's really transformed in this game. From someone who's not there to someone who's slightly there.
He is there. He is a player in this game.
I think we heard more from him this episode than the whole season, which is not a bad thing.
No, of course not.
But yeah, I mean, it'll be, again, I mean, I guess it'll be interesting for him. He loses Tony and Swale. He has this interesting relationship with Susan. How loyal to her is he? He's popping her balloons. It's kind of, I guess it'll be interesting to see who else he reaches out to, because I feel like, have we seen him with anyone but Swale and Tony and maybe Susan? So I don't know. I guess it's just a big question mark for me, because
we saw him in the big group. He was there.
Oh, that's true. But he didn't partake in the drinking of Don's blood, so that I saw that. That was interesting.
Oh my God.
So I don't know. I'm glad that he's like in it now. So we'll kind of have to just wait and see what he does. I feel like it would be a very tough road to the end unless he's sort of politely carried there. So
can we talk about something? Hold on. Can we talk about it? Tribals. He did this twice. Where I asked the question that's just a fucking softball. Sorry for the people who don't like F-bombs.
Then they don't
where
like Daniela.
They don't like Daniela, Shayna, or Don. Where I ask, who feels in danger? Swale put his hand up and he was safe.
that was great.
Michael, both times, is like, no, I feel safe. I feel like I know where it's going. This boy who hasn't been to a tribal council at all.
Right.
It's just like, I'm safe. How do we? I mean, like, he's right. He wasn't the target, but is this smart? Is this dumb? Does it matter? Does it not? Everyone hates it.
I guess it depends if they think he's, and I hate using this word, but it's used a lot in Survivor, like a goat. Like if he's already seen that way, then it's accurate and the other people aren't going to perceive it in as negative of a way as it being like a cocky move coming from Dawn or somebody who's like in the numbers but also at risk. Like if it were another player, it may have come off even worse. But I do think that just say you feel like, even if you have immunity, be like, yeah, I feel at risk because I don't know what's going to happen next round. Like it could be that even if you don't feel you're at risk that night, like say something.
Mhm.
I mean, he said something.
Not something good.
I like it. I think tribal is like, you can go into tribal and be like, okay, I'm actually playing this game, like participate in the discussion, like be like Faith and get conversations going. Or you can just go into tribal and act like you don't know where you are. Like someone just sat you down and you're like, okay, you're Survivor, you're in the game. I don't know. That's more of my like humorous look at it. But I just think Michael is such an interesting player because he'll be like sitting in their bunk, like him and Swale are in their bunk bed talking. And I swear it's like the first time he's talked about Survivor with Swale in like however many days it's been. And I just have this like, my impression of him is that he's like not playing the game at all, or he's like has no idea how Survivor works. And I mean, that can get you far in the game. So, I mean,
He said in this episode, I don't want to ruin my first impression with these people. On day like 49, 50, 51, it's like, Michael, there's
Like he
been
was a
51
twist, and you just brought him in this episode.
Did he,
Yeah.
did he think it was like normal Survivor and he wasn't allowed to talk to people on other tribes? Like, does he know this is college Survivor?
I don't think he knows.
That could be.
I mean,
It-
this is maybe if Michael had gone to any tribal pre-merge, would he have survived? I have no idea. I can't even tell you what would have happened.
No. I think like his best case scenario is to end up in a position that, at least from the, again, televised perception of All Stars that Eric King was in, of nobody thinking, at least from the viewer's perspective, that he could win, even though I've heard since then that players thought he could. But like, I think that's his best case scenario, is to get to like fourth and not be in an alliance, and then people just be like, oh, let's just get him out. Like, I think that's his best path, best possible solution in this game, like, or best possible path in this game, is to get like fourth and then not be with people who like him, and he's just the easy vote out because the person they really wanted out had immunity.
So what you're saying is you want people to they're at Final Four, but they're like, we made it to Final Three. They turn to their left and there's Michael. And they go, oh, you know what? Maybe he is better to take than you. That's what you're saying, is that Michael just needs to not say anything.
Just not play Survivor, but just
Keep it
show
up.
up.
Right.
Would Michael be a better player if he didn't say anything at Tribal?
Probably.
Uh-oh.
And put your hand up when you're
Sorry,
asked if
That's
you're.
mean.
I mean,
if
Only-
you're-
Only say something when Anders says, "So, Michael, what do you think about this?"
right.
Okay, so now let's talk about that. I don't want to say real players, but
Oh,
let's talk about
the other players.
Yeah, let's talk about Kevel. He's been pretty quiet up until this point. Mostly because he hasn't gone to Tribal. Like, Alex was very much involved in Mankato Tribals, and also not really base squad, but mostly Mankato. Meanwhile, Kevel was just like, I don't have Tribal. So how do you guys feel? You get some taste of Kevel.
Yeah, I think I was saying before, like, I mean, he's a question mark too, just because, yeah, it's sort of like he's just getting to the game now, really. And I think, again, the where he ends up lying between Don and Dylan, I guess, will really kind of show like his true colors and where he's at. I don't think I think he's going to make it pretty far. I don't think, he's on anyone's radar at this point. So it's almost like I don't have enough information to really pinpoint like the type of player he is yet, because he hasn't been to Tribal.
Congrats, you're every player in the game. Where is Kevel?
Yeah, I feel like I don't have enough information to make any read on his game, which, depending how you interpret things, I guess could mean that I don't think he's going very far. I feel like he'd be more. We would even just like see some like side clips of him being silly or him like having a conversation if he were more involved in the game. I know that you would show things if it was prominent to what was happening in that round. So I'm just saying, like, so far, I don't think he's been prominent in those rounds.
I see Kevel as someone that Susan or Dawn or basically some of these like stragglers in the game who were affected really by losing Tony and Swale. He's someone that you want to like pull in. I think Alex has somewhat of a hold on him. And I think, again, like, since he hasn't made much of a name for himself, he can kind of use even like Alex as a shield in a way, because she's been, even though she was the one behind that big decision, I don't know. I just see Kevel as someone that Susan or someone's going to have to like pull in as a number. Otherwise, he's on like, he hasn't made a secure alliance with anyone at this point. And he really was just like riding in between some of the power players. And I mean, that's a good strategy, but I feel like it won't get you anywhere close to Final Four. So
I don't see a path for both Michael and Keval to both make it. I think it's one or the other.
People are talking about this Dylan versus Don war, but really,
No.
it's a Michael versus Keval war.
Yes.
Who will say less?
Who will get less airtime than the other? Be
Truly.
more purple.
All right, let's talk about our final of the 11. Our sweet boy Don, the leader of the Majority Alliance, the one who gave his blood for them to drink. What do we think of Don? Talk about CP5. Talk about like 6. He was a 6 visibility. You couldn't see enough of Don in this
Yeah.
episode.
It's very visible. A lot of the conversations revolved around him, what he wanted, but also the fear of the alliances he could have as well. Like, I think that he's really trying to make it go on to Dylan and everything because he knows that that could come back to him.
Yeah, I think he definitely set himself up pretty well in the beginning. By talking to everyone, he was talking to people in different tribes. I think someone had mentioned it. I think he even put up like different screenshots of him with like every person. So I think he's set up well. This whole Dylan and Don thing is just, it's interesting because I feel like I don't think they're necessarily like, I feel like their paths to the end are definitely a lot harder for them too than other people. So it's kind of interesting that they're the two that are always, out in the front, but at least with the conversations. But what was I going to say about it? Oh, and I don't think him playing the idol, I feel like that was actually a really bad move. And he even said like, I don't know if I can trust these people. Well, you were just drinking with 9 or 8 other people, the day before or whatever. So I feel like he shouldn't have done that or said that. I feel like I feel like that was a bad move. Like,
Gives red
I
flags
can't
with other
trust.
people.
Like you're creating all these relationships with so many people, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, I might not be able to trust any of them. So I feel like that's going to come back and bite him sooner rather than later.
So to give perspective on why Don played the idol, because I was also a little bit confused. Like, Don has this alliance of 9, and he still plays an idol. I don't know what world he thought, but the explanation is they didn't know that Swally and Tony could necessarily be trusted. It is like they want to trust those two, but in the off chance that those two flip to Dylan and Daniela and then put 4 towards Don, it's like, would he rather waste it and know he's staying or risk the chance that the people he doesn't trust will flip on him? Also, he said, I don't know if I even put this in the episode, probably didn't, that an idol makes you a threat. He did say that about like Dylan and Swally. It's when people have idols, you want to get them out. And that's why Swally was more of a target the second time, because he might have the Mankato idol. Let's get rid of it now. And so by getting rid of his idol, he became less of a threat, theoretically. I mean, if you don't know he has an idol and he just plays it, maybe you might sing a different tune.
Right. And
But
who
if
knew about it?
anybody knows, then
The only people who knew about it were Keval, Emily, and Faith.
Okay.
but still, that's 3 people that could easily become 4, 5, 6, like so quickly if there's any perception change on him from the people he's working with.
Right.
And none of them knew he was playing it, right? Because I think Faith had a reaction to that. Did they know?
It was thrown out there. It wasn't like 100% he was going to do it, but like they weren't necessarily caught off guard, if that makes sense.
Okay. And I think it was interesting too that Keval saying like, I think he was saying he'll give him the clue if he votes out Faith or something. So I don't know if that'll come into play
That was
later.
pre-merge though.
Oh, it was.
So like it was, if they go to tribal again, Don can't go home. It would have to be either Faith or Emily.
Oh, got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's the 11, and now there's 9. What do we think's going to happen next? These 2 votes were, I think, very out of nowhere. They weren't straightforward. They had some weird things. I mean, the last vote was basically Swally voting himself out. That's what happened.
Yeah, why did he vote for Daniela and not Dylan?
because Dylan sent him a text that was like, "Yo, you got to trust me. If you don't vote for Daniela, you're going home." Which, I mean, irony.
Yeah.
Oof.
um,
What is happening next? Who knows? This is Survivor
Well,
Maryland.
yeah, I mean, Emily's saying in the scenes for the next episode, like, it's been Don versus Dylan the whole time, and there's other people. So I don't know if people are now going to lay off that, and go for other players. Like,
I would guess the people in the most trouble are Daniela, Dylan, and I would say if they're trying to go for a less risky move, Kevel. That's the three I would say are at the most immediate risk if things stay more or less the way that they are.
And Joe, to your credit, that's what the next time is for. What is going to happen?
Oh, is that why
it was
that's
weird.
there?
I watched these scenes and I wondered, are things going to change?
Yeah. I guess that's why we're here too.
Nope, it stays the exact same.
Yeah. Actually, nobody leaves because we had three tribals here. So you're just gonna give
Everyone gets immunity.
More
Next
black.
time on Survivor, the war rages on, and Dylan doesn't have an idol. He goes home.
Hey, there definitely could be another idol rehidden. So there's a possibility that anybody could get that at this point.
It's true.
That is true.
And
Because doesn't
are we at 9 or 10 now? 9?
9.
Right? Okay. So if Michael, Kevel, Dylan, and Daniela all team up together, they only need one more person, which, like, I don't know, maybe an Alex or somebody could flip and they have majority.
This is also the first time in this game there's more girls than guys.
Yeah.
The game started off with 10 guys, 9 girls, and really just went downhill from there for them, really. And there's only 3 Ferocity members left.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
That's what happens when you go to tribal lots.
As the next time showed, they went to tribal 4 times.
I agree.
Michael, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I think Dylan is on the hot seat, and as much as like Don is a possible target, like you actually proposed, Stephanie, like a good scenario, like where they could potentially get enough votes to target someone like Don or someone in the other. Like,
Faith and Emily, Susan, or Dawn. Yeah.
No, I was thinking like Susan would work. I don't know.
Good. Yeah.
I'm thinking like Dylan tries to get the vote onto Daniela because I feel like it would be hard to get the vote onto Don and Daniela. Like they're both in a similar position where they're like lacking alliances. It's kind of like Alex and Kevel just straight up left Dylan, and then Daniela. I don't even know who was she aligned with before this, but yeah, I feel like their gameplay, both being very like loud and kind of getting some hate, it's gonna be like a fight. Like, okay, who do we get rid of? Who's more annoying? Like, who can I actually like pull into my alliance and like want to work with for the remainder of Merge? But I mean, I guess at the same time, Don's always a threat. Pretty much till the end of the game, Don's probably gonna be someone people are talking about every week.
Yeah,
imagine.
He's a physically strong guy who also has social connections.
Mm-hmm.
So who do we think is going to win? Actually, before we get to that, who do you guys think is going to be the final 3? Who do you think out of these 9 players you have? I mean, 3 of them will get to the final 3. Who do you think it'll be? Obviously, Michael, Kevel.
Michael's going to final 3.
You know what? I was considering putting him in there.
I can see Faith going far. I don't know.
I can.
You want to
okay.
explain, or are you just gonna leave it at that?
I can see. I think. All right. Here's my prediction: Dawn, Michael, and I don't know, Daniela. I don't know.
Wow, that is why? How?
Okay.
It's an interesting group of three. Why? I'm curious why you think that.
Okay, so Daniela and Dylan are on the hot seat. Somehow Daniela survives and like gets Dylan out, and then they just start picking off Alex, Susan, and then Kevel will come in like to the game all of a sudden at like final 6, and there'll be a big blind side, and all of a sudden the Fed will break up. And then as the Fed's disintegrating, somehow Don just like immunities himself to the end. And he's like, all right, I'm gonna bring Daniela. And I'm gonna bring who did I say?
Michael.
Michael. Yeah, actually, you know what? Michael doesn't go far. He's going soon. So I don't know.
I love fan fiction.
I think Don can maybe not Michael and Daniela, but one of them. They're both really good goats to take to the end, and I think Don could somehow get himself to the end by, I don't know, maybe all the girls turn on each other, and then there's like chaos, and Don just sort of like survives to the end.
Wow, surprise, surprise. Michael says women can't work together. They're turning.
Susan, I don't know. Susan and Emily, like, they're both great at making relationships, but like they're gonna have to fight each other at some point, and I can see like the girls not holding up well if you have like Dawn and some goats like blindsiding them one by one. It's a bad prediction.
Hey, yeah, but
Yeah. Oh, you're wrong.
You don't think any of them have a chance, Anders?
they all have a chance. They all have a 1-9 shot. Those three, it's an interesting three.
Andrew has never considered it, which
Oh my
means
god.
Well, like a Michael,
Never
Daniela,
seen it.
Dawn. It's like talk about picking three from everywhere.
Okay.
Talk about hot take.
I
My
think-
final three
All right.
is the
Anders, I've seen goats make it to the end, and I have a very personal connection to this.
get
problem.
over it. Shut up.
So,
We've all seen it.
you know,
It's just
I just
you
picked
named two of them as goats and said they both make it. It's like
I picked the 3 most unlikely people in the group, and then I'm like, all right, there they are in the end somehow.
all right. So besides Michael's awful take,
you want our takes.
yes.
Yeah, Stephanie.
Okay. I was trying to like narrow it down when you were speaking, but I think I'm gonna say Susan, Faith, and Kevel, maybe. Like, because I think that at least one of the 3 will not be a strong power player in the end, and so. But I do think that Susan and Faith are kind of my toss-up of like who's playing better right now. So I think that at least one of them is going to get there. So by saying both of them, then I'm giving my chances a little bit higher.
What a good prediction. Unlike
What the heck? I did the same thing. I picked one of each, so like if I'm wrong, at least I'm kind of right.
no.
No. So I'm right and you're wrong.
Who needs logic? It's survival.
Fair point.
I'm struggling, but I'm just gonna go with the 3 people I have at the top: Faith, Emily, Alex. Final 3. Epic.
Wow. Power.
Yeah.
Power.
I do like that. You know what? I put Alex in mine. I'm taking Mike.
You know what? Maybe I should pick someone that I think is strong.
Maybe I should pick someone I think can win. Just kidding.
So, okay. So who do we think is going to win this game? There's a lot of game to be played. There's a lot that's going to happen. Who knows what's going to happen next time?
I'll say who I want because I don't know for sure. I'm terrible at making predictions, but I think at this point of the game, from what I've seen so far, I want Susan to win.
She wants to make her third graders happy. Let her do it.
Hey, I'm a first grade teacher, so
You get it.
yeah, the kiddos is where it's at.
I stand by Don. Don wins.
All right, I'll
That
mix
has
it up.
not even crossed my mind, so that is like a shocking revelation to me.
See, the difference between saying Dawn wins and like saying that the final three is Dawn, Michael, and Danielle is that when you say Dawn can win, it's like that is something I could see. You know, we've seen potential in him. But when you put those three as the final three, it's like that's a, you know, I don't know what world or what show you've been watching, but like talk about giving everyone high visibility and then getting rid of all of them.
I will say that I have a bias in what I've seen in my own personal experience, so that kind of affected my decision. And I agree, like that would be the weirdest, most impossible thing to have happen. But you never know. Things
So
are-
what
It could
happened?
happen. It could. I could just be lying to all of you, being like,
You'd be
"That's
like,
so
how did we
stupid.
get it?
That's so stupid. You think Michael's gonna win?"
You idiot.
Shayna's in the chat.
Shayna's here. Oh, I'm glad that she finally came instead of. Is she? No, she isn't.
I thought
Wait,
she
where?
just
Oh,
popped.
she is. Hey guys. Hey Shayna. Thanks for responding to my. Hey, want to join this Google Hangout? I'm not gonna put her on blast, but she did text me at I guess 9 Eastern. And was like, I'm tired, and now she's awake at midnight. Whatever.
12:30. Yeah.
Like, oh, time to chat.
Okay, so finally, Joe, what's your prediction? Who's gonna win?
Man, this is tough. I'm gonna go with Emily.
As opposed to Faith or Alex?
Yeah, because I do have them all as my final three. I don't know. I don't think that'll actually happen, but I'm gonna give it to Emily. I would
guess-
have said Faith, but I'm gonna go with my second choice. Well, not my second choice.
Darn it.
It's your
Well, she
coin
technically
flip
is
between
my
the two of
second
them.
choice. Yeah, she is my second on my list currently. So, but yeah, I'm gonna give it to Emily. I think that'd be a good win.
Well, I'm glad that it's not. God, when everyone said Alex in the first episode, I'm like, God, everyone else just sucks. So it's good to see some diversity in this. We got Susan, we got Emily, and we got Dawn. I guess we will see what happens. Still got another week before episode 9. Who knows who's gonna go home? Will it be Dylan, Dawn, Emily? It won't be Michael. He's too good. It can't be Michael, Daniela, or Dawn though.
Yeah, they're final three.
Final three. I'm telling you right now as a host, I never lie. They are final three.
In Michael's fan fiction world.
I've been working on it, right? All the time.
He just wants another Michael to win.
Yeah.
So it can be like it come from a lineage of great Michaels.
The first new host season, season 6, season 11.
Oh.
Michaels represent.
Oh, I was like, where are you going with this? You just said numbers and then went,
5, 11. These are my favorite numbers. Michael's favorite.
Oh,
all right, well, thank you guys so much for coming. We've been on this for too long. But I do want to thank everyone for watching this, and then Joe, Michael, and Stephanie for coming. Thank you so much for watching and enjoying this and talking about it.
Thanks for
Not as
having
many
me.
hot takes as I needed. I needed more. You know what? As much as I'll shit on Michael for having just the worst takes, at least he had hot takes. I needed someone to say. I need someone to come out and say, honestly, Daniela should have flipped on Shayna from the very beginning. She sucked. Just because what fun is it without a little bit of controversy? But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. Is there anything you'd like to say before we end this?
Thanks for having us
Thank
on. This was really
you.
fun.
Thank you.
You're doing a great
Um,
season.
Bring me
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. All right, peace out, Girl Scouts. Don't drink and do Survivor. And remember, Vape Nation.
I'm too old for